Guys, we all know that the Soviets get around to some crazy stuff, and I've been watching a lot of Fat Electrician, which I'm loving, and I found this video. It's called When the Soviets Tried to Create Human-Chimp Hybrids. Human-chimp hybrids, what do you mean? What is a human-chimp hybrid, and why would you make one? Like, why would you make one? Making like AI/human hybrids makes more sense, like robot humans than human chimps. But okay, let's get into the video, guys.
From movies like The Fly and The Island of Dr. Moreau to modern classics like Splice or Dogman, the movie-going public can't seem to get enough of a human mixed with some kind of other animal. Plots involving these types of monsters aren't just great sci-fi fodder either. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a worldwide fascination in scientific advancements led many of those on the less ethical side to ask the question, why can't we make monkey men? And by less ethical, we mean Joseph Stalin. No, really. So, today we're investigating whether Stalin's Russia really created human-chimp hybrids.
So what you're telling me is someone went just like, why not? Why don't we make human chimps? And then just tried to do it, or what? Also, if they were making like advancements, I've always thought about it but imagine if someone from today went back in time. Like with everything we have nowadays, they'd probably burn them and think they were a witch or something, but
But before we go bananas, why don't you go on over to that subscribe button, then swing down to the comments and let us know what other historical horrors you want to hear about. Okay, in Soviet Russia, banana peels you! You may think you've heard about every bizarre secret project undertaken by Nazi Germany. But what about Russia's attempts to unleash a human-ape hybrid super army? No, really, there was a human-ape hybrid program in Soviet Russia under Joseph Stalin. But despite Stalin being one of history's greatest
Is this where all the movies about apes taking over the world comes from? What?
bad guys, it was actually the work of one particularly dedicated and deranged Soviet scientist. So, thanks to all the scientific advances of the time, the 19th and 20th century was fertile ground for wild and unethical experiments. Once the politically and financially powerful got the idea of eugenics in their heads, they wasted no time using science to further subjugate and control populations. But ape men were never on Stalin's radar. It was actually an earlier Russian scientist named Ilia Ivanov who had conducted experiments on cross-inseminating humans and chimpanzees. So how did Stalin's name get in there? Because of a single journal article written by Russian scientist Kirill Rosyanov that pinned the whole idea on him. Academic journals are supposed to be peer-reviewed with legitimate sources, which made Stalin's culpability in the matter seem credible. But neither his name, influence, nor approval are present anywhere in Rosyanov's reference article. It is likely Stalin didn't even realize such experiments existed and read about them at the same time as everybody else in the newspaper. And to be honest, he doesn't really seem like a super ape kind of villain. Super bears, maybe.
I feel bad for the monkeys that were involved in this human madness. But did it work though?
Instead being popularized by 20th century creationists who wanted to promote the salacious story so they could buff up their arguments against evolution. So, noted and celebrated bad guy Joseph Stalin was not the leader of the man-ape endeavor and likely had nothing to do with it. So who was Ilia Ivanov, and what the hell was he up to? Ilia Ivanov was a highly respected Russian scientist with a keen dedication to all of the wonderful new advancements in the science world. He also played it pretty loose with the ethics portion of the scientific method and wasn't big on asking if something should actually be done just because it was technically possible. Ivanov spent most of his career working with livestock in an attempt to improve horse breeding. His studies and successes with artificial insemination made him a world-renowned scientist in the field, producing livestock hybrids such as a zebra-donkey mix, delightfully known as the Z-Donk. But as evidenced by his lectures and writings, Ivanov had one mad scientist project he had been aching to try out since at least 1910, the possibility of birthing a human-ape hybrid. A few years after the 1917
I'm just like, why would you do that? First of all, why did he have the idea? Like, what led him to think, why don't I make human-ape hybrids? And like, what was his conclusion? Like, what is gonna happen after that? Like, okay, that would be pretty cool though, because if they were like hybrids, could they climb walls and stuff? I wish I was a human-ape hybrid, but they probably would take over the world because they'd be stronger probably than human. They could climb, or maybe not, but probably this didn't work and they just came out like, not good. But let's see where this goes.
Bolshevik Revolution. Ivanov thought that the new regime might be up for funding his research. The initial plan was not to develop an army of super soldiers covered in hair, but more to conduct additional, higher quality artificial insemination procedures with the backing of the government. The only monkey wrench in Ivanov's plans was his controversial decision to include humans in his research. This resulted in very few people willing to do business with him, with little support coming in, and none of it from Stalin. Despite concerns, Ivanov attended a prestigious scientific event that included the likes of famed scientist Ivan Pavlov. The project was awarded the equivalent of $10,000 by the Soviet Financial Commission, which gave Ivanov the go-ahead to explore human-ape hybrid possibilities in 1924. You may be asking yourself how we won over support for such deranged experiments. Well, a lot of it had to do with their relationship to Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin had included the close relationship that chimpanzees and humans had on the evolutionary tree. Ivanov's thinking was that he could take Darwin's theory a step further, providing the missing link in the chain. Ivanov was also looking to discredit and disavow religion altogether, so such a successful experiment could potentially display the superiority of science over religion, something the Soviets were very keen on showcasing.
Right, so the in-between humans and apes. But someone told me in another video where I was watching some history, and I was like, there's nothing in between humans and monkeys, doesn't make sense. Someone said that we don't come from monkeys. I mean, we come from some other species. I don't remember really well, but yeah. Apparently humans don't come from monkeys, and my whole life has been a lie. But let's see. I wonder if the humans birthed the ape hybrids or the apes birthed the hybrids, and if there's any difference if they would switch,
But his failure to produce a man-ape hybrid would only make the case stronger for religion, something Ivanov could not abide. So in his mind, it was all or nothing. With his newfound grant money in hand, Ivanov and his team got right to work at their research station in French Guiana by March of 1926. The idea was for local hunters to poach wild chimpanzees and bring them back to the scientists so they could perform their experiments. The team eventually wound up with 3 juvenile female chimpanzees as test subjects, who were inseminated with human sperm. When this first round of tests failed, Ivanov
I don't know why, but of course they were female. Of course. That's so disappointing. No, I mean, why won't you try the other way around?
who were inseminated with human sperm. When this first round of tests failed, Ivanov figured he'd try the reverse, only he didn't want to waste time with things like informed consent. So, under the pretense of a standard medical exam, Ivanov had the idea to trick local women into being impregnated with chimpanzee DNA. Luckily, the governor of French Guiana rejected this proposal outright, and presumably threw Ivanov out of his office. This bump in the road forced Ivanov back to the drawing board in Russia. He continued to have no luck tricking women into participating in his experiment, so he adopted a new scheme for creating his human-ape hybrid. 20 chimpanzees were sent over to Russia from Africa to live in a Soviet chimp nursery, but when the plane finally landed, only 4 survived the trip. The remaining chimpanzees were brought to a warmer region of the USSR, where Ivanov somehow convinced 5 local women to agree to possibly become proud parents of a cross-species warrior. But this attempt also failed after the remaining 4 chimpanzees died shortly after arriving in Russia. Okay, the universe is trying to tell you something, Ilia. When Ivanov's experiments all predictably failed to produce a human-ape hybrid, creationist supporters and evangelical Christians around the world celebrated the results. If Darwin was running around saying that humans and chimps were pretty much the same thing, then why couldn't they breed together? Answer that one, Charlie! Evangelical Christians at the time were focused on invalidating Darwin's theory, and Ivanov was helping them out immensely. This is what eventually popularized Stalin's alleged connection to the Soviet ape-man superarmy, partly because it discredited Darwinism and its theories, but mostly because it was a great way to take potshots at Stalin in the process. Any action that could deal damage to the credibility of the Soviets was taken with gusto. Ivanov eventually exhausted all of his government funding, but by that time, the scientific world had grown pretty tired of the idea of a human-ape hybrid. Growing nationalism across Europe also had sensibilities changing, prompting leaders.
I'm curious though. I'm curious if that could be possible. I mean, I wouldn't want to put any apes, monkeys, or humans' lives at risk to test out something like this. But imagine that it worked. Like, what would it what would it come out as?
And citizens to explore different approaches to eugenics. Suddenly, the idea of a monkey man wasn't all that enticing, if it had ever been in the first place. Also helping to douse the ape hybrid ideology was the rise of the Nazi Party. When it was first popularized, eugenics was a discussion about parents being able to optimize the genes of their children, potentially eliminating disease, or maybe even choosing their eye color. However, eugenics is pseudoscience, primarily associated with racism, and it quickly evolved into regimes using it as an excuse to eliminate lesser populations. Hitler's Aryan master race concept rapidly replaced the sensational idea of a human-ape warrior. After World War II, eugenics became scientifically and socially unacceptable, otherwise known as quackery. This was a major hit to the chimp-human hybrid field, and it was never able to.
By the way, guys, have you ever seen the movie The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, I think it's called? It's about this time. Like, you know, it's about a boy who was at a camp, at a Nazi camp. It's a really good movie. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's beautiful.
Recover. After Vladimir Lenin died in 1924, Stalin began consolidating his power in Russia, eventually rising to the top of the heap by 1930. At that time, Stalin decided a good old-fashioned purge of intellectuals was necessary and started things off with the scientific community first. Ivanov was arrested and accused of inciting a counter-revolutionary movement. But really, we think it was because of the ape thing. He was exiled to Kazakhstan, where he lived until his death 2 years later from a stroke. His old buddy Pavlov even wrote his obituary. But Ivanov's projects did not continue after his exile, as far as we know. With the real mastermind behind human-ape hybrids dead and buried, you may think that was the end of the whole humanzese idea. However, Ivanov's ideas did not die with him. Take the unusual case of Oliver the chimpanzee, one of the most human-like chimpanzees ever observed. Claims were made that Oliver existed somewhere in the genetic space between humans and chimps.
Man, you're telling me that looks like a human? I mean, it kind of looks like my old math teacher, honestly. Yeah, okay, I'll take it.
Oliver existed somewhere in the genetic space between humans and chimps. The missing link, sometimes associated with Bigfoot. If true, this could lend some unintended credibility to Ivanov's theories. Besides somewhat looking the part, reports indicated that Oliver had 47 chromosomes, as opposed to the normal 48 that make up a chimp's DNA. This places him much closer to the 46 chromosomes found in humans. These claims were disproved, however, after Oliver's DNA was tested in 1996, and scientists found all 48 chromosomes present and accounted for. So was Oliver just an unusually handsome chimp, or the work of a mad scientist? Those guys never stay in the ground for long. So what do you think? Would you want to see a human-ape hybrid? Let us know down in the comments. And while you're there, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.
would I want to see a human chimp? Probably not. Um, because if I think about it, would I want to see one in the wild? Most likely not. But would I want to see one like in chains somewhere? Probably not. Neither. Probably not. Definitely not. And but I'm curious. I'm just curious if we could somehow kind of like do this without having real lives in it. You know, like I don't know, like a simulation of what would happen. That would be cool. I wonder if that's possible. I mean, human anything hybrids is a like just a fascinating idea. It's a bit sick. I understand. But I mean like just to like imagine like what it would be. It's kind of cool. But I would no. No. Don't mix humans with animals, maybe. I don't think it's a good idea. But yeah, that was super interesting and a little bit freaky. And thank you for joining me for this video. If you, I was gonna say if you like it, then like. Yeah, that makes sense. If you like it, then hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.